Hello guys, welcome to my channel. This is the 35th tutorial in this course, and in this tutorial we are going to talk about functions, not predefined functions in Python, but user defined functions, the ones that you can create and use for the sake of your own convenience, right? So a function, those of you who haven't programmed in any other language before, is a block of code that performs some task and can be called by a name. You can give a name to a piece of code, and you can call it whenever you need it in your program, right? And the main advantage of using functions is reusability of code. So what I mean by that is, if suppose there is something that you want to do in your program a bunch of times. Let's say you want to find the product of two numbers 10 times. Then instead of using the multiplication operator 10 times, you could create a function in which you have the operation performed, and you can just call that function 10 times with 10 different sets of arguments, and you could find the products of numbers. So this is a very small example that I gave you. Generally people use functions when they want to do something complicated over and over again, right? So this is different from a loop, by the way. In case of a loop, you have different iterations with different inputs. With a function, you have the same thing happening over and over again, but you can vary the inputs to the function if you want to. So anyway, that's enough of me talking. The way you create a function in Python is by using the def keyword, or the define keyword, and you type in that, you give a space, and then you type in a name for your function. So I'm going to call the first function that we're going to make in this program as sample, and let's say this function takes in some value, right, from the program. So let's assume that value is a string, and through this function we just want to display that string on screen, right? So I'm just going to type in text here, and this is a placeholder for the value that we're going to pass to this function. After the closing parentheses of the argument list, I'm going to put in a colon, and when I press the enter key, I'll get inside the body of this function. And since I just want to print the text that has been passed to this function, I simply use a print statement, and within parentheses I'll just type in text, right? And the next thing that I'm going to do is type in return, right? So this is important in Python. When you want to get out of a function's body, you have to type in this keyword, and when I press the enter key, I see that the cursor blinks on the previous level of indentation, right? So this is where I came from, and this is where I am now, right? So this means that I'm outside the body of the function sample. And to call this function, all I have to do is type in the name of the function, and as an argument to this, I'll have to pass in some text, right? So I'm simply going to pass in hello world, and I'll save the file, and when I run the program, I see that I get the text hello world on screen, right? So this was the simplest example of function that I could think of. It just takes some text input as an argument, and it just displays that text on screen, right? Now it's not necessary for your function to take in some argument. So let's say I am not going to pass anything to this function, and I'm just going to use a print statement in the function to display some text. So I'll display something like I will print this no matter what. So even if you don't pass in an argument to me, I'm still going to print this. I'll save the file, and since I haven't written a placeholder here within the parentheses, I don't have to pass in any argument, so I can get rid of this string argument that I have in here, and I'll save the file now, and when I execute it, I see this text. So this is despite the fact that I haven't passed in any text to the function, but since I have a print statement in the function, and since I have called the function using its name, this statement will execute when the function is called, right? The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to see how we can create a function that takes in more than one argument, right? So we're going to make a 4-function calculator, and what I mean by that is we're going to make a function that takes in 2 numbers, and then it performs the addition operation, subtraction operation, multiplication and division on those 2 numbers in a sequence. So I'm going to call this function calculator, and in the parameter list I'm going to type in a comma b. So these are my dummy parameters, or placeholders, or whatever you want to call them. And then on the next line, I'm going to use a print statement to display the result of the addition of a and b, right? So addition, I'll put a colon after the second double quotation mark, I'll put a comma, and then I'll type in a plus b, and I'll just copy this statement and paste it a few times. Okay, wait a second, I'll have to do this, and then one more time, and one more time. Okay, so the second case has to be for subtraction, so I'll get rid of addition here and type in subtraction, and I have to change this to a minus b, and this has to be for multiplication, so I'll change addition to multiplication, and this has to be changed to a asterisk b. An asterisk is the multiplication operator, and the last has to be for division, so I'll change addition to division and the operator to the slash, right? I'll save the file, and on the next line I type in return, move out of the function, and now I'll simply call the function with the, let's say, 155 comma 25 as the two arguments. So I'll save it again, and when I run the program, I see all these four operations performed, and I see all the results. So addition, the result is 180, subtraction, the result is 130, multiplication, the result is 3875, and division result is 6.2, right? So now we are in a better state to talk about the utility of functions. So let's say in your program you want to do these things 100 times. Then if you were not using functions, then you would have to type in these statements 100 times 4, that is 400 times. But since you're using functions, all you have to do is you have to just call your function by typing in its name, and if suppose in each of those 100 times you wanted to have different sets of numbers, you could pass in different numbers as arguments, right? So that's how cool functions are. And I don't necessarily have to go back to the script and execute it with different inputs. So let's say if I want to call the function calculator with 25 and 5 as inputs, I can do it this way by going to the script and executing it, or I could simply type in calculator here and have in my arguments here, so 25 and 5. When I do that, I get this, and this is because the shell was restarted here and this function was called, and then the calculator function was kind of stored in the memory, so now you have access to it. But if I would press Control and F6 and restart my shell, and now if I would try to use the function calculator with some input like 15 and 3, I would get an error because now the shell has been restarted, so this function no longer exists in the buffer memory or whatever, right? And the significance of the return statement is not just that it gets you out of the function body, but it could also be used to pass an expression back to the calling function or the main program, if you've called the function in the main program. So if that sounds complicated, let me just show you something. So let's say in this calculator function, you don't want to find out all these things. Instead, you just want to find out what is the result of a raised to the power b, right? So I'll type in a variable name here and assign the result of a raised to the power b to that variable. So I'll use the exponentiation operator or the double asterisk symbol, and I'll type a double asterisk and then b, and I'll type in return to move out of the function, but after the word return I'll type in var. So in a way, I'm instructing Python that I want to get outside the function body, but I also want to return this value that I've just computed on line number 2, right? And while calling the function, what I'll do is I'll call it inside the print statement to display the value. So I'm not using the print statement inside the function here, so I'll have to use it outside in the main program, and I would have to call this function with some argument, right? So I'll type in calculator, and as arguments to it I'll pass 6 comma 3. So this function will calculate 6 to the power 3 for me. I'll save the file. When I run it, I should see 216 as the answer, and that's what I see, right? So that's one more thing that you can do using the return statement. So anyway, that's said for now. In the next tutorial, we are going to talk about functions in a little more detail. We're going to talk about what's the difference between passing by reference and passing by value, and what happens in Python, whether we pass by reference in Python or whether we pass by value. And I hope you guys had fun watching this tutorial. You may subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care.